So I want you all to be honest and tell me if this is a fantasy you used to have as a child, or heck, maybe even as an adult. I promise I won't judge. You're in an attack spaceship, piloting it on an impossible mission in deep space. It's up to you, and maybe a small squad of scrappy ragtag pilots, to destroy an evil enemy with a massive, planet-threatening craft of their own. You and your allies approach the vessel, thinking you have the upper hand thanks to your surprise tactics and cautious planning. But the turrets on the top of the enemy destroyer move and take aim, and suddenly you're dodging an impossible barrage of missiles, lasers, and weaponry the like of which nobody has ever seen before. You move left and right, taking out each turret and bay, taking 1 in a million shots into the craft's ventilation systems, its only design flaw and weak point. Your allies cheer you on. "Take the shot," one yells. Let's call the one that's yelling Biggs. And then suddenly, your childhood friend is hit, and you hear him scream his last, as poor Wedge crashes into the enemy spacecraft, bravely taking out a large plasma cannon as he dies. But it won't be in vain. You pull down your visor and guide your shot into the last vent, curving through the system's ductwork and blasting its core. The ship explodes as you and Biggs get the heck out of there. If only Wedge had been so lucky. Poor Wedge. I miss Wedge. Anyway, if you have had some form of this fantasy, and if you grew up when I did, I suspect you may have, then you might be interested in Dreadnaught Factor for the Atari 5200. But let's see if it really does let you live out your deepest, darkest Star Wars fantasy, or if this embarrassing daydream of mine should have gone unspoken. The Dreadnaught Factor was originally developed by Tom Loughry for Activision back in 1983. It was originally released on the Intellivision. There was a port to the Atari 8-bits, and the version we're looking at, the Atari 5200, was released a year later in 1984. In Dreadnaught Factor, you must protect your base and a planet from one or several Dreadnought ships, similar to the Star Destroyers in Star Wars and other such science fiction films. And the first time playing it, well, I was pretty impressed by the size of the enemy ships. The amount of firepower and weapons on these things are quite impressive, and can be extremely challenging to conquer, depending on your difficulty settings. Upon starting up the game, you can choose your difficulty setting by pressing a number between 1 and 7. I recommend starting on 2 or 3, because difficulty level 1, well, it's just stupid easy. The enemy dreadnought approaches your planet, usually somewhere between 5 to 10 units at a time, and you'll be able to tell how close they are getting by the map screen before launching your attack ship, and by reading the distance in the upper right-hand corner. The upper left-hand corner tells you how many dreadnoughts are left, and this changes depending on your difficulty choice. The closer the enemy dreadnought is, the faster you'll reach it in open space, and the less time you have to get into an advantageous position. If the distance reaches 0, then your base and the planet are destroyed and it's game over. But until then, you can launch as many ships as you want, which is a nice touch. I really meant it in the beginning of this video. This game really feels like an epic fight with a massive spaceship. In the higher difficulty levels, the enemy turrets even move with you, and the missiles launch in both slower and faster variants. It's really an impressive challenge, especially if you start with the lower difficulties and work your way up. Most of the enemy ships have the same general appearance, with most of them being gray with a little bit of detail and color variance. These ships are lined with turrets, massive blasters, missile launchers, and all kinds of major artillery. You'll also notice vents lined across the ship, and usually about 4 engines propelling this thing forward. You'll want to destroy the weaponry to give yourself some relief from the barrage, but to destroy these ships, you'll need to bomb all the air vents. The top button fires a straight shot used to destroy the enemy artillery, and the bottom button releases the bombs you need to destroy the vents. These bombs also destroy the engines to slow the dreadnoughts down. You can also slow yourself down by holding back on the joystick, and then speed up by pushing forward. And getting the hang of setting your speed is a must to bomb the vents and dodge enemy fire. The game plays really well, and I have no doubt that you'll be able to find a difficulty level that's appropriate for you. But if you find the game to be boring or lacking excitement, which wasn't a problem for me by the way, well then unfortunately there really isn't anything different to do, and the game probably just won't be for you. They might have done well to maybe add a different segment or two, or maybe you take on smaller ships or something like that. But honestly, I like what they did. The sound isn't anything special, and mostly consists of the sounds of shots being fired, bombs dropping, and a few things blowing up. There is a nice effect here or there on the map screen, but overall, I think basic is the best way to describe the sound. I found the audio of your ship's motor to be irritating after a while, but most of the time, you just won't notice it if you're able to get into the game. As I said before, the enemy dreadnoughts have a fair amount of detail, even if they lack in color variety. The ships themselves have a ton of different shapes and forms, and this helps to keep things a little fresh. You have pyramid-shaped dreadnoughts, long skinny dreadnoughts, super wide but short dreadnoughts, and dreadnoughts with 2 tips and so much more. There's a nice rolling effect for the planet on the map screen, but the player ship looks really, well, it looks like crap. It's one solid flashing color, and the only nice thing is that the flame coming out of our thruster does get bigger as you speed up. But overall, our craft just looks like a big blob of nothing to me. Definitely doesn't look like a ship. I can't tell what they were going for with the player sprite. But I guess it doesn't matter as much, as you'll be staring at everything coming towards you, more than you'll be looking at your own ship. But it is worth pointing out. So in my opinion, the Dreadnaught Factor is an addictive game that works surprisingly well. Even for its age, it does the things that it sets out to do, and it does them pretty good. But I think we need to fly into the juggernaut known as the Atari Network Pros and Cons section to see if I can recommend Dreadnaught Factor or not. And as always, we'll start with the pros. First off, this game features impressively massive enemy ships, and a nice variety in their different shapes and layouts as well. You'll be dodging a ton of enemy fire, and there is a nice spread of difficulty levels, from silly easy to crazy hard. The game conveys a feeling of being sent on an impossible mission against a daunting enemy very well. Impressively well, actually. The control layout is simple, and it just works. The game scrolls smoothly, and there can be an impressive sense of speed and a large amount of enemy fire on the screen at one time. But as you would expect, this game isn't perfect, so I need to point out a few cons. First, the colors of the enemy ships don't change, which makes them feel kind of like the same despite the different shapes and layouts. The sound can get obnoxious after a while too. If you don't like fighting the dreadnoughts, then there is literally nothing else for you to do. Adding a little bit of variety seems like it would have been easy to do, but they just stuck with the one thing. I guess what I'm saying is it's probably not for everybody, and I could see some people getting bored with it quickly. But with all that said, I think it's fair to give the Dreadnaught Factor and the Atari 5200 4 rebuilt controllers out of 5. I've seen other reviewers give this game a low score, and I just don't see it. Yes, it does one thing, but it does that one thing very well. And it successfully allowed me to live out a long-time fantasy, which is impressive for a game from 1983. As I said in a previous section, it's not going to be for everybody, but I think that every 5200 owner should give it a try. I have to believe that most people will enjoy it like I do, even if they get bored of it faster than I did. And with that said, it's time for me to hear what you all have to say about Dreadnaught Factor. Have you played it? If so, did you like it? And if you never tried it, do you think you will in the future? And I'm a little curious, does anybody else have the fantasy I described in the beginning of the video? Or did I accidentally out myself as a sci-fi geek for no reason? Let me know the answers to all this and more in the comments down below. And please, leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We put out 2 videos a week, so hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we upload. And I'd also like to take this time to thank the following classy Atarians for supporting me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. You can too in order to receive exclusive content and shoutouts just like the one I'm about to do. Follow the link on the screen or hit join below the video. So thank you to My Own Celestial, OG Hugo, Head Trauma Bob, Jolt 7800, Ball Gobbler, Socrates 63, Fens the Spook, Mr. Shua TV, Jeremiah Thomas, and Huge Ass 79. You all rock, and I couldn't do this without you. And with all that said, it's time for me to sign off of another video. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, a pilot for the Rebel Atari Force here at the hidden base known as the Atari Network, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. And remember to stay classy, Atarians.